Do you know where you can find billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth?
And some canyons?
Uh-huh. Hi everyone, welcome to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. We're so glad that once again you would join us, and we hope that you are having a great day, just like we are. We told you last time about our trip to Arizona, and we showed you around the city and how it's in the valley. The city of Phoenix is in the valley. Today we are going to take you up north of the Phoenix Valley and show you a place that Alyssa has wanted to go for a long time, and we finally did.
Yeah, it was the best ever.
So, here we go.
Let's see if you can figure out what this place is just from this picture. And if you guessed the Grand Canyon, you got it!
Yep. There are not many places that look like the Grand Canyon because it is huge. We flew over it once, and as we were looking down below, we were like, what is that? And then we thought, it must be the Grand Canyon, but we're not sure. So we looked it up later, and it was. But this time, we actually went there in person on the ground, and it is amazing.
And it is really cool. You can go there for a lot of time and still not get to see all of it.
Yep. Here's just a look at the side of one of the walls, and you can see all those perfectly layered out rocks or sedimentary layers. And we were just at the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter, and we got to see some models that told how the canyon was formed. And if you believe in evolution, it's really hard to look at this and say, yeah, this happened over millions and millions of years. And this was cut away by this little tiny river running through the middle of it. The best explanation for why this happened was the flood, the worldwide flood. And once you go there and just look at it in person, you can't help but think, wow, this had to be something huge and catastrophic that caused this, not just something like a little river that went through all this rock and cut it away. It just doesn't work.
And layered it so perfectly. Like everything is just, and then some places it's folded, but it's all folded together. Like nothing is cracked. It just happened really fast when all the rocks were somehow soft.
Yep. But this thing is massive. It's very deep. What's really neat when you go and visit is they don't have a lot of it like roped off, or so you can go right up to the edge if you want. They suggest you don't, and we suggest you don't because it's so deep. But you can just go and enjoy, even in a sinful world, the beauty that God can pull out from that because of how amazing He is. Here's one of the places where I climbed down a little. It was totally safe. And this is as far out as I went on that corner of a cliff because I didn't want to fall down. So that was about as far out as I went just to look around. And then here's another one where we just sat on the edge, not super close to a drop-off so that our parents aren't getting scared. But it was a beautiful view, and it's an amazing place to go. If you ever get the chance, we would highly recommend it.
And we can tell you it's really worth it to take the time to hike down inside. Now, I would definitely follow the trails, and there's some cool apps and stuff that you can use to figure out how to hike different trails and stuff. But once you hike down a little bit, you start to realize how massive the canyon actually is. Because you can look at it from the top and be like, okay, it looks pretty big. But once you start going down, you realize, oh my word, I can keep going down and down and down and down, and it just keeps going.
Yep. So another week we're going to tell you about our trip down into the canyon, and we'll go into a little more detail at that time. Here's a view that's kind of down inside, not completely, but you can just see all those layers of rocks. And this was all formed during the flood, and then this water that came by and just washed out the sides of it like this, and so you have this nicely formed, basically a mountain. All those cliffs.
Lots of little mountains.
Yeah. A couple mornings we went and watched the sunrise, and we found a place where there was no other people, and it was great. We just had it all to ourselves. So if you go, let us know, and we'll tell you some of our favorite places and why, and how you can see some of this without all the tourists. But it was fun to watch the sunrise coming up over the edge and then filling in the Grand Canyon with light. We saw some wildlife, and this is an elk. And while we were there, they came up within just a few yards of us. Like, there was one time we were parked on one side of the road taking some pictures, and we turned to get back in our car, and I heard some people walking, so I turned to look at them, and it wasn't people, it was an elk, just on the other side of the road, so about 10 yards away. And they just looked at us, and then kept walking on. So they must be used to people. But this is another time when we watched the sunrise, and it came over near where we had parked, and I followed it, and was able to get this picture from about 20 yards away, I think. But they were pretty close, and they weren't scared. They didn't run away like the deer we saw, so that was pretty cool. At night, we heard that it was great to stay and look at the stars, so we did that, and we were not disappointed. There is not much artificial light at the canyon, and so at night, all you can see is the darkness of the sky and then all the stars shining through. And thankfully, we didn't have a lot of clouds, so we were able to just look at it. And if you look up in the top right-hand corner, where it looks like there's these big splotches of light, those are galaxies. Like, if you zoom in on our picture, you can see little spirals, like 3 or 4 of them in that little area. And so a lot of what you're seeing is not just individual stars, it's bunches of stars or other galaxies that you can see so clearly at night here at the canyon. So that was really cool.
Yep. And the light at the bottom, in case you're wondering, is from a campsite. There's a campsite for people who want to hike across the canyon, and so they can kind of meet up down there. And since we left our camera, the lens and everything open long enough to get all the light from the stars, it picked up the light from those campfires, even though they weren't that bright. It just looks really bright.
So that is the Grand Canyon, and like I said, you need to go. We're really glad we did.
Yep.
I don't think it'll be our last time, unless we die fairly soon, then it might be, but hopefully not. And so it is well worth your time, and it really is not that expensive. There are some tricks to finding out how to get it cheaper. You can make it expensive if you want, but it's not one of those trips where you just have to spend a lot of money.
No.
So it is really a great
really
place
cool.
to visit.
It was worth it. I
Yep.
waited a long time to go. It was really fun. Want to hear some more story?
Yes, about Corrie Ten Boom.
Yes.
So let's hear it.
So we're going to do part 2 of the story. And we're still talking about her first as a little girl. And so we're going to keep going with our story. Now, Corrie lived in an area where they speak Dutch. And actually her last name, Boon, is the Dutch word for tree. So her family really liked the Bible verses from the beginning of Psalms that talks about, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, standeth in the way of sinners, or sitteth in the seat of the scornful. He shall be like the tree that's planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season." And they used to take their names and just stick their name right in there, because they would read it in Dutch and it would just be like their last name right there. He shall be like a boom, like from her family. So her family thought that was pretty cool, and that they could be like a tree, and that they could be a good example and a light to shine Jesus' love to the people around them. So we're going to keep going with our story today. Corrie, are you ready? Let's go. Corrie's father was a watchmaker in Holland back in the 1900s. He repaired clocks and watches, and he needed to go to Amsterdam to find parts for them. Downstairs, Mr. Ten Boom was waiting for Corrie. Upstairs, Betsy had washed Corrie's face and her hands with soap, and she also made sure that Corrie had a clean dress on. When you went with Daddy to Amsterdam, you definitely needed to be all dressed up. "Corrie, you look so nice today," said her dad. "Give me your hand and let's go." They went by train. Corrie got to sit by the window. There was so much to see. There were houses in the cities, and next the mansions of the rich people, and the meadows with the cows and the sheep. After a half hour, they saw the houses of Amsterdam. Amsterdam's central station is right by the water. You can see many ships there. On top of a steeple, there was a long iron pole so people on the ships could see it. 2 movable arms were positioned on that post. They pointed straight up, exactly like 12 o'clock, like the arms, but at exactly 12 o'clock, the arms would move down. If you were lucky to have a good spot on the central station, you could see it. When Corrie and her father were finished visiting the special shops that sell clock parts, they would come back to look at that post. Because her dad really liked clocks, obviously, because he was a clockmaker. At the shops, Mr. Ten Boom brought all sorts of things he needed to repair his watches. Almost all the men who ran the shops were Jewish people, and they were very good friends of Corrie's father. They always had a treat for Corrie, too. At home, there was hardly ever money for treats, so it was extra special. Corrie and her father made sure that they were back to Central Station by noon so they could watch those posts. At home, the Ten Boom family had a special clock that kept very good time. All the watches that Corrie's father repaired were set by their clock at home. But the clock in Amsterdam was even more accurate. The 2 arms went down exactly at noon. Corrie's father stood on tiptoe so he wouldn't miss it. Wham! Down they went. Father looked at his watch. 2 seconds early, he said to himself, and he wrote it in his little notebook. When they got home, he would set their special clock right to the second. Now, if you need to know the time, you can just look at somebody's phone or at a computer, but they didn't have that. They had to really keep time with their watches and clocks were designed in such a way that they held time a lot better than our watches do now with batteries. And so it was important to him because that was his job. On their way home, Corrie was able to ask her father all kinds of things. Her father never acted like her questions were strange, and he always gave her an answer. Sometimes her father thought Corrie was too young to know some things. Then he would say, "Corrie, would you like to carry that heavy suitcase full of watch parts?" "No, Daddy," Corrie would answer. "That's too heavy." "That's right, Corrie. And as long as you're too small, I will carry the suitcase. In the same way, there's some things in life you're too young to know about now. It's enough for Daddy and Mommy to know about them." Corrie loved her father very much. In fact, he reminded her a little bit of another father, her heavenly Father. Corrie believed in Jesus. She had trusted that Jesus had died and risen again, and she had asked them to be her Savior. She knew God was her Father, and he would never, ever let her down. When Corrie and Mr. Ten Boom got home, Aunt Anna had a meal ready. She made it nice and tasty as she could. That wasn't easy to do with 9 people in their house. And when you didn't have a lot of food, that'd be even harder. Every week, Mr. Ten Boom gave Aunt Anna a guilder, which was worth about $1. That was the kind of money. For all the help she did for the family. That might not seem like very much, but back in the 1900s, it was a lot of money. Sometimes on Wednesdays, when the baker and the butcher and the greengrocer, someone who sold fruits and vegetables, had to be paid, Corrie's father didn't have enough money left to pay them. So Father would ask Aunt Anna, "Do you have your guilder?" And she always had it. She never seemed to spend that money on herself. Sometimes there were more than 9 people in their house. Guests were always welcome at the Ten Boom's house. It was a special time when people visited. On the table was a little tin where money was put for people who tell other people about Jesus. Every time something special happened, Corrie's mother put a 1-cent coin in the little tin. They called it the blessing box. One evening there were 2 guests, and there was a good reason for putting a cent in the blessing box. Aunt Anna had not planned on having 2 extra guests, so she added more water to her soup and she peeled some more potatoes. The guests didn't mind the soup or the little piece of meat they got. They were very happy to spend time with the Ten Boom family. Their home was a happy atmosphere where guests felt welcome. There were always exciting things to talk about at mealtime. They didn't just talk about things that didn't matter. Most importantly, the guests noticed that Jesus was a very important part of their home. 2 guests listened very closely as Father read some verses from the Bible at the end of the meal. One of the guests had a problem and wanted to talk to Father alone. "Just come along to my workshop," said Corrie's father. After talking a while, they prayed. Mr. Ten Boom knew that God was able to solve all problems. They experienced this often at the Ten Boom family. If Mr. Ten Boom didn't know how to fix a watch, or Mrs. Ten Boom was ill, or one time somebody had cheated Mr. Ten Boom and he had no money left. In times like those, they learned that Jesus always has the answer to their problems. Sometimes it was problems about money or illness, or sometimes somebody was sick or being treated badly. They learned that God gives joy, even though they have difficult problems. So they learned to be thankful, even though things weren't always so great for them. It's a good lesson for us, too, I think. Along with Aunt Anna, there were 2 other aunts in the house, Aunt Bet and Aunt Jans. The children didn't really like Aunt Bet very much. She used to take care of children from rich families, and of course those children were disobedient, just like all children, but Aunt Bet had forgotten about that. She would compare Corrie and her siblings to how she remembered other children being. So if Corrie and Betsy came to the dinner table late, Aunt Bet would say, "The Waller children never came late." And if Corrie slid down the handrail, that of course would be something the Waller children would never do. It seemed like nobody else ever had runny noses or dirty hands or dirty shoes. Do you think that was true? No, but Aunt Bet just seemed to remember it like that. Actually, life hadn't really been all that easy for her. The people in those rich families hadn't been very nice to her, and that's why she was always a complainer. So Corrie's mother always tried to remind them to be encouraging and nice to Aunt Bet so she wouldn't feel like complaining all the time. Corrie's other aunt, Aunt Jans, had been married to a pastor. Because her husband had died, she moved in with the Ten Boom family, and she was a very happy person. She worked all day. She wrote books and poems and started editing a magazine for young women. Each month, Aunt Jans was given a small amount of money to help support her because her husband died, but she didn't keep it. She always gave it away. Sometimes she would buy new clothes for the girls. It was always nice to have some new clothes. Corrie and her sisters wished Aunt Jans didn't have such plain taste when it came to clothes, though. Nolly and Betsy especially did not like it when she came home with another boring gray dress, but that's okay. Sometimes Aunt Jans would come home with something really nice, like a cake, when it wasn't even somebody's birthday. Later, when Corrie grew up, she wrote about Aunt Jans. "I believe she's the richest person I've ever met, because she was someone who loved to give to others." In Harlem, the city where Corrie lived, there was an army barracks. That's a building where the soldiers live. And there were many, many soldiers that lived there. One day when Aunt Jans was walking down the street, she noticed that the soldiers were just standing. They didn't have anything to do in their spare time. That's not good, she thought. They need something to do. If they're bored, they'll get themselves into trouble. What should we do? She had an idea. Why not start a group for soldiers so they could go in their spare time instead of feeling bored? And better than that, they could hear about Jesus at this place. So when she set her mind to do something, she did it. Soon there were soldiers coming to a room Aunt Jans had made ready. They liked having something to do. One sergeant came and saw Aunt Jans's little organ in the corner of the room. He asked if he could play it. "Of course," she said. Soon music was through the whole house. No one in the Ten Boom family could play that well. Aunt Jans listened and was amazed. When he finished playing, she said, "Do you think you could teach my nieces, Nolly and Corrie, how to play that beautiful organ?" "Of course," he said. So Corrie and Nolly liked that idea very much. Soon they could play so well, and they could sing while someone else was playing. Soon there were so many soldiers coming to Aunt Jan's room, it was too small to hold them all. But as usual, she knew how to fix the problem. One day, everyone helped give the room a good cleaning, and they polished up the silver and made sure everything was nice. That afternoon, there were going to be rich ladies coming to the room instead of soldiers. The ladies climbed up the stairs to Aunt Jan's room and had a cup of tea. Then she explained her story. She told about the soldiers who needed a place to go, and how the place where they were meeting was too small. They needed a bigger space where they could all be together. The ladies liked that idea, and they gave money to build a center for the soldiers. Once the center was built, Aunt Jans went there twice a week to give a Bible study. Nolly or Corrie went with her to play the organ. They sang for the soldiers too. The girls learned to do anything for Jesus at a young age. Later in life, Corrie was going to tell so many people about Jesus. She didn't know that yet, but God knew. And when she was young, she learned how to tell large groups of people about the Savior. Now, she didn't always know how to tell people about Jesus. When she was still young, her sister used to be a Sunday school teacher. But she asked Corrie to come help teach with her one day. How do you think that went? Her first time teaching Sunday school? You're going to have to come back next week and find out how her first teaching adventure went.
Okay. We are ready to tell you about a couple missionaries who we have not introduced you to before.
Yeah, we have some new missionaries today. And these are my friends Phil and Helene DeMart, and they are in France, actually in the same area as some other missionary friends that we shared with about a while ago. So these are my friends, Helene and Phil and Callan and Hudson and Lenora, and they're all so cute and enjoying their time in Massey, France. So they live in a suburb of Paris, about 15 miles from the Eiffel Tower. Oh, that looks like such a fun place to go. Actually, I've been there.
I feel like you've been there.
But I would like to go back. It's really fun. So right now, they are in school learning French. They have a long way to go, but they can carry basic conversations. They're very friendly with their neighbors and local shop owners, and they're looking for opportunities to have longer conversations with the French people. French people really like to keep to themselves, so that's even harder now that it's pandemic, and so it's tough for them to get to know people.
Mm-hmm.
She included this picture because it's Notre Dame, and this famous cathedral was actually on fire at one point this year, I think back in the spring or so, and so they're in the process of repairing and rebuilding it. It looks good so far. But that's not too far from where they live as well. So one of the unique things about their area is that some people have cars, but most of the people walk to do their daily errands. So they walk when they take the boys to school, and they walk to go to get their groceries, and they walk to do like so many things. And they buy their bread daily, and they keep some American bread for like peanut butter and jelly, but most of the time they like to buy baguettes and pain au chocolat.
Ooh,
That looks really tasty.
I feel like I've had something like that before in an airport lounge, and it is very tasty.
Oh, it looks so good. So we'll show you, the boys like to also try out some scooters. It's another form of transportation. And buses too.
Fun.
Yep. They have bakeries nearby, and actually Hudson can go in and do all the ordering himself.
Is this a video of him doing that?
That is a video of him doing that. Well, let's watch that. Here. Look at his little blue shirt.
He's just a little guy all by himself.
Yep. She says they can get 2 loaves of bread for about €1. So he's got their bread. Cute. Oops.
He's so proud of himself. I love that video. So back to the tasty food.
Yeah. So culturally, French people ignore each other, except when you enter a store or a room or a restaurant. It'd be very rude if you don't say bonjour first. Before you ask for help or to place an order, it's always expected that you greet somebody, and you always end it with bon journey. Must be like good journey, I'm gonna guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, French is not my first language at all.
Have a good trip. Oh, more food.
Oh, yes. She said if you go to the grocery store, you can find that octopus there on the left. She hasn't bought it yet, but it's there. And they also have whole rabbits that you could purchase if you want to cook a whole rabbit.
Oh.
And in the summertime, they like to have lots of little picnics, so they can get their bread and their little meat and cheese and everything, and just enjoy it that way. So the boys have really long school days from 8:30 to 4:30, but they do have a long lunch break for 2 hours, and they can stay at school or come home. Their boys do 2 days à cantine, which is a school lunch, and 2 days maison at home. Oh, I hope they don't listen to this. I have terrible pronunciation for this. Sorry. We only have 4 days of a school week: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Oh, so no school on Wednesday. The boys play marbles a lot at school and trade them with their friends. Right now, there isn't much outside of school due to the pandemic, but they're both in sports clubs with soccer and handball, and everyone loves soccer here. And their town especially likes handball and rugby. And Hudson is the one on the left in the front with his really bright hair.
Uh-huh.
This week, Christmas, they're happy for a break from their classes. They're looking forward to some rest and some family time. And please pray with them as they recuperate and get ready for a new year. The boys are learning lots, but they're still new to French, so we can keep praying for them as they continue to learn the language. It'd be really hard. Just imagine what it'd be like to go to school and have to guess what the teacher is teaching, or just see what she's doing and then look at what the other kids are doing.
Oofda.
Yeah, they're ready for a break.
Mm-hmm.
So we can definitely be praying for them with that too. For the next few months, we can also pray that the whole family learns French and that God would give wisdom in where they should live, in their new home and their ministry in Chambourcy. I should have asked for pronunciation for all of this.
I've been pretty close, actually.
So we asked if there was anything that they wish people would ask about. And she said, I wish that people would ask what the people are like instead of just assuming that they know what the people are like.
Ah, that's true.
And they always want people to ask how they can help or if they can come join us here in the work. And France needs the gospel. There's a lot of people, less than 1% of the French population knows who Jesus is. So the whole nation is considered neutral. And they just got a paper home from the kids' school reminding them that school as a part of the state is neutral, giving kids the opportunity to make their own choices and free from proselytizing. This makes them very sad because it will split up the family. Much of this thinking is in response to the lots of Muslims in the country, but of course that affects Christians and other religions.
Mm-hmm.
Their apartment overlooks a synagogue, so they can see that right from their area.
That's what is going on down
Yep, you can see a Jewish man.
there. Uh-huh.
But there are lots of Muslims all around them, so there's a wide variety even in their block of the neighborhood. There have been some terrorist attacks in Paris that we hear about on the news, they said, so praying for safety is always greatly appreciated. So yeah, that is Phil and Helene DeMart and their kids and France. So we can be praying for them as they keep learning the language and that they would be able to enjoy their time off for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you learned something new,
Mm-hmm.
or hopefully you just enjoyed yourself. And we will look forward to seeing you next time. We have more to tell you about the Grand Canyon,
Mm-hmm.
more to tell you about Arizona, and we have someone else
missionary.
next week to tell you about as well.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah?
Bye.
Bye.